Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the StarCraft 2 World Championship Series. I'm your host, Nathan Fabricant, joined on the desk,
And I'm Jeff!
by Dr. Jeffrey, who has a PhD in kicking butt and playing StarCraft.
Yeah.
You put in enough years. What is there a further degree of study? Like, what would 20 years of research into StarCraft, what would that be?
God Emperor of Mankind.
Okay, well, there you have it. So, thankfully, I'm in good hands, and I'm going to leave all of the smart stuff to Jeff as we get ready to go into our next game. I just want to say, if you enjoy going in a pool of your own filth, but you like having some control over it, there's a wonderful skit for the spawning pool. That's right, the Simulan Zerg spawning pool. If you ever wanted to be in the worst vile pit of whatever is in there that you could possibly be, now you can go in a fake, sustained, controlled one. It will probably still give you some extra limbs you didn't want, so just a fair warning. How do you feel about that, Jeff?
Beautiful skin, supports the pro gaming scene, gets yourself some good-looking stuff so you can play StarCraft looking even better.
Okay.
If I could reskin myself in different ways, if I could take
Do you want to be Simulant Jeff?
How cool would that be? Think about that. In like
be
a
a
digital
robot.
future when we just get to project a different image over ourselves. That'd be amazing.
That would be kind of cool.
Yes,
You
it
just
would.
walk around as a robotic version of yourself when you want to be.
No, I would be Chris Hemsworth. All the time.
Okay. That's
I would just be Chris Hemsworth, and people would be like, hey, Chris Hemsworth. I'd be like, good eye. That's it.
fair. That's fair. We are ready to get into our match. The players were eager to jump into this one, as it's going to be Hellraiser versus Gerald.
Gerald.
Only allows me to think of that old Nickelodeon show. That's it. That's all I got. That's all I can think about when I think about Gerald. I don't think I've ever met
Which one?
a Gerald in my entire life.
There's a show called Gerald?
I think he was in Hey Arnold, wasn't he?
Oh, Hey Arnold. Yeah,
Yeah.
It was a good show.
I think that is the only Gerald I've ever been made aware of. His name has T in it, which makes me think of something completely different in the game. But anyway, in the bottom right, he's our Blue Protoss player. His name is Gerald.
Matthias Budziak.
Jeffrey, do it.
And in the top left-hand side, from Team Welvin? Is that what that says?
Wolven, I'd guess.
Wolven.
Wolven.
It's Hellraiser!
Now, when can we get this guy like a burning
Bogdan.
skin? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where's the?
You know what Hellraiser's in reference to, by the way?
I just assumed that.
The horror movie?
Yeah, that's fine.
It's that or a biker gang. It's the two choices we got for the most part.
Do they do biker gangs in Europe? I thought that was like a super.
They do, it's like sidecar gangs. What is that called? the moped and the sidecar. They load it up. They grab their like best billy club and they drive down to the local village
Do they?
dairy market and they're like, hey, you will give me 3 of your best goats. And they're like, no, you cannot have any of our goats. And they're like, well, I guess it's about to get bumpy, Mr. Lumpy. And then they dance off.
Nice. Well, that sounds way
But
more
it's-
wholesome
yeah,
than
it's-
what American biker gangs do. So,
Oh, for sure. I mean, they're really nice people in Europe.
yeah. I'm gonna assume that they did get that movie, so maybe he's just a big horror fan.
Who is it?
Oh no, it's gotta be
Game
Andy.
paused.
It's nobody.
Whoa, I've never seen it
Yeah, that-
freeze like that.
isn't that
And
interesting?
someone be able to pause it
And a pause?
before someone
Like-
lagged out.
That's weird. The game is constantly evolving. We're having a little bit of a pause here. Thank you guys. Thank you for
Yeah.
tuning in.
We got a lot of StarCraft coming up today, so for those of you guys just joining us, there's a lot cool stuff coming up that both players are just making sure that everything is good before we get back into the game. We've got quite a few matches. This is a lower bracket match for our Europe group today, and then we're going to do the winners match, then the decider, and then we go to the WCS Americas section, where today playing is my #1 favorite player of all time, whose name isn't Gumiho. It's Neeb. I can't wait to see him. The game has started. We are back in. We have to get into the game. You're missing this. There's a probe chasing another probe. We're back in. I feel like it could be the equivalent one day of like cute cat videos. It's just like probes running around, tackling each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Think about how horrifying a probe is, though. Like, it's this...
Is it really horrifying, though?
No, I mean, if you actually saw, like, a hovering off the ground, I would call it probably like an 80 pounds, maybe 100 pounds of inanimate, like just kind
So you think it might be like one of those things when you're outside the Matrix chasing you without the tentacles,
No,
basically?
not quite.
What a probe would look
But
like?
it has diamond cutting, like lasers. So if it is going after you, it's literally cutting into your flesh with like a industrial tool. It's pretty messed up.
Yeah. The same could be said of a drone or an SCV, though. I don't know what about a probe.
Yeah.
I thought the idea was that probes just looked cuter than the other ones.
No, the reason I was saying that is because you were saying it's like a cat video, and I'm like, kind of. Only if the cat was like capable of driving up against you and extracting your shin. You know what I mean? Like.
Have you met many cats in your days, Jeff? Because that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I know a lot of cats. Cool ones.
I was gonna try to make a Root Cats reference after that, but you got me.
That oracle's not real.
No, it's not.
It's not.
It's not a real.
Whenever
oracle.
people show up with a hallucinated oracle, I'm always like, oh, you. And I know it's, you know, why not? Like, it moves about the same pace as a hallucinated phoenix, but I just like the little mind game StarCraft players play with each other.
If you knew you were playing somebody who like really hated oracle openings, then you could maybe get in their head a little bit. Or if you beat someone with an oracle rush and then you played them again, and in the second game you did the hallucinated oracle, that could do it too.
We're going to have some aggression coming out from our red Protoss, Mr. Hellraiser here. He's going across the map with some stalkers. The Twilight Council behind this, of course, is not going to be of any use right now. He's building a Nexus, so it's not... This is not like a full-on crazy attack, but you'll notice he's got a lot more stalkers than his opponent, and this is going to cause some problems, because behind this it's Phoenix, and at this point in time, there's not that many Phoenix for Mr. Gerald.
No, there are not.
Like, hey, what's up?
Coming down to help. He's going to force the ramp here. Going full Alpha Star is Hellraiser, picking off his opponent's stalkers. And, yeah, no, showing the blatant disregard for the ramp. I don't know why he's pulling back.
I do not know either. Yeah, he's got a sentry coming up against Phoenix that's actually pretty explicitly bad.
I feel like he could just kill the pylon on these gateways.
Yep, and actually getting the Phoenix here would be huge. There's 3 Phoenix, now down to 2 is a big deal. He's not going up this ramp, he's just happy with his damage. This is still pretty close to game-ending damage, and Gerald's like over-eager to fight with insignificant units. He's like, hey, look, I still have less units than you, come on up. And so he's like, I guess I will.
So I guess I will come inside of your base and then kill everything. And that's going to be a G to the E to the G, E.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't try too hard to make that work. 9, 10 probes dead. This is death numbers, guys. You'll notice on the production tab, nothing coming out here for Gerald, and he is out the door as game number 1 is sealed and delivered. Now, this game came down to one moment in time. The force field actually missed. He tried to block off the stalkers between the pylon and that spot. Had he done that, does he win the game? No. Does he do it? Does he buy enough time that he can get another warp in? Yes. And then there's 3 Phoenix, but instead of what ends up happening is he misses the force field, and then instead of waiting at the top of the ramp for stuff, he just dives down, picks up with the Phoenix, takes a bad fight, and loses from there. And PvP is literally that volatile. You take one bad fight, and it kind of snowballs with stalkers against your tech like that, you just die.
It's rough. It's not easy, especially considering, like you said, the sentry, the force field's got to actually get something done there. It's not going to contribute to the combat. And very good aggressive play there out of Hellraiser, showing a good bit of confidence in this matchup.
And you know, Nate, you hit ask or hit even, but you just bring up a good thing. It was only 7 stalkers, and behind that there is an expansion. There were probes coming out. There was a Twilight Council, so it's not like this was some crazy 4-gate all-in. This is meant to apply pressure. Maybe you get a pylon, maybe you get a stalker or 2, you get them to pull the probes off, you reveal the tech. If they are going Phoenix, that shows up. If they opened Oracle, your attack happens at a really inconvenient time. So it's a very safe opening. It's very good. But I have to say, just the way it was handled was really poor, and it ends up being a game-ending opening. So it was...
Yeah. It's one of those gut punch builds, right? Where you'll see it every now and again. It's like when a Zerg's like, oh, I'm just going to send like 6 roaches. Like, this shouldn't do anything. But then the other player just doesn't have any units, or they're out of position. Suddenly you get a bunch of worker kills, and everything spirals out of control. And it's like, well, this really shouldn't have done that much. Right. But Hellraiser capitalizing on the opportunity, and that finds him 1 map away from eliminating our first player here in the Southeast. He is wearing blue. His name is Gerald. Now I just want to say Gerald because
Gerald.
His in-game name has the T. I feel like those 2 names are completely different.
They are.
I don't know how we got Gerald and Gerald.
Maybe he misspelled his own name, which would be kind of weird.
That, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Maybe they thought it was a typo when he submitted Gerald, and someone was like, well, I've never seen that name before. I don't know. In the top left, his opponent, in red, Hellraiser. I'm sorry, Blizzard Esports team. I'm not trying to say you can't read. I'm just confused.
Well. Okay. Both players, by the way, if you take that kind of situation out, we're opting for fairly normal things. Like Twilight Council is the other opening typically do. So Stargate, Phoenix is a great opening that we saw from Gerald, but that type of attack specifically is quite strong against it. I do have to say, though, it did come down to that bad fight. He doesn't need to go down the ramp. He doesn't need to grab the Stalkers there. He was another warping away from having a similar amount of units, and then with the aid of 3 or 4 Phoenix, he could win that fight. And the power of the Phoenix, too, is there's not really a great retreat from there. You'd have to recall, but even in doing so, you probably lose a unit or 2. So both players playing with fire there, but it's Hellraiser who comes out quite a bit ahead with the win.
Yeah, and just really good execution there on the strategy. He's got a second probe moving out, so perhaps some proxy shenanigans in control.
Yes, and I love this, too. So he will full-on scout with this probe, and that is the normal time. A lot of players opt to scout quite late in PvP, especially in that European scene, and they show up just to kind of confirm that it's normal stuff. But when that probe goes in there, and I bet you, by the way, I bet there's a little bit of Hollywood in Hellraiser here. He's going to be like, no, I'm going to hang around. Maybe I drop a pylon by your gateways, and I want to block the Nexus. And, man, look at this probe. It's so occupied.
You should really try to kill this probe so that it doesn't do nothing bad.
Look at this, man. I'm way in your base. There's no way there's a proxy. But this is beautiful. It's brilliant because, again, the way your brain works in a PvP is when that probe is in there, you are not worried about a proxy. And to Nate's point, maybe he actually purposely loses it to really sell it.
But maybe Protoss players are usually so good about getting their probe out that the only reason his opponent would leave the probe in here for the Stalkers is because he wanted him to think he wasn't proxying.
No, Nate, you know better than me that Protoss players are not that complex of human beings. This is exactly what it was. If that probe dies right there, that is the only probe out on the map, and he is not going to scout at all.
It's a gentleman's game, then. You lost your probe, you must not be proxying me.
That's correct. It takes the paranoia of a Terran player to kill a scouting probe like that and be like, no, there could be another one. Just setting my repro out.
Always do, actually. Yeah, every time. Good catch here with these steps for
Gerald.
Gerald. Just going to smack this down. And that was all a ploy to sell the Oracle even harder.
You know what he's got coming out after that? Sentry and a Stalker, and he's across the map, which is not in position to defend against the Oracle. And this is game-ending damage. This is, I mean, he might just insta-leave. It's actually a possibility. It's for elimination, so he probably should.
He's going to
recall back. He's dead. He's dead. You actually might even just lose the Oracle. He's going to... Nope, yeah, he's going to... and that's fine. 11 probes.
Yeah. 14 workers to 20.
Show the graph.
Oh, the fancy Fear Dragon hotkey graph.
That's not a graph.
Show the graph, Jeff.
Are you serious?
Dude.
You know the lore behind a freaking Hellion, and you know speed...
I'm not the guy that observes. This is all I got. Fanciest observing trick I know is the big zoom out, because no one else ever does it.
You almost feel like a Cranston impression, like the P. Knox would say, like, I'm not the one who observes. Now, this is nice return damage. This is obviously going to give him
This buys him a new lease on life, right?
Oh, yeah.
He has the expansion done.
Now he's only down 5 workers, which is still a very big deal in this matchup, but obviously a lot more doable than the 11.
Yep.
And it is going to be Blink here from Gerald.
Do you think he builds at some point another Oracle to try and, like, one-tap the probes here? Because there's obviously with the battery, he can't just send one.
There's a funny invisible threshold, because this is, keep in mind, his second Oracle. He lost the first one.
Right.
The third Oracle is this weird invisible line that if you get to that point, it really sucks out a lot of the teeth from your army and your tech and your ability to kind of constantly churn out probes. So you have to do a ton of damage. And seeing Blink on the way already, and his opponent's obviously aware that another Oracle was made, it's very unlikely that there's not a shield battery, there's not Stalkers, there's not stuff to respond to that.
Right.
So reinvesting into that's a bit too much.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation, Jeff.
Well, I'm like the bad scientist of Protoss out there. I'm like, let me tell you how bad 3 Oracles are, because I've done it a ton of times, and I'll probably do it tomorrow when I ladder.
I can explain why things are good and bad, but in game, there's still this, like, I've always had the gambler's mindset where I'm like, it's bad, but maybe because it's bad, they're not expecting it.
Well, that's the harsh part of ladder.
Yeah.
Because that is very true, though. That is a huge part of it.
Oh yeah. And it works sometimes, and that one time it works will poison you for the other 6 times it doesn't. You know, you're like,
Yeah.
well, it worked that one time.
I had that same realization where I did the breakdown. I'm like, guys, my BC builds are even better, even though they got nerfed, because enough other players stopped doing it that Zergs are just going to be not as used to playing against it, and thus will perform worse against it.
Yeah.
Thereby making up the gap. So you never know.
Dead Oracle.
Gets the tag with the revelation, and that's it.
Gerald was doing this last time too. He's opting for early forge, which is kind of cool to see. It's a stylistic thing. It's not good or bad necessarily, one way or the other. Upgrades are a big idea in all matchups, but in PvP, the first upgrade's not super big. But if you can get to 2 attack upgrade and your opponent's neglecting upgrades, you can really feel it in the Archons hitting Zealots and stuff like that. So we'll have to see if that ends up being the case. But otherwise, army composition-wise,
That looks a little lopsided in control. Oh wow, there's one
boy.
of the stalkers.
those ramps going up.
2 Immortals, Prism. We've got a Zealot in there. There's a couple of Sentries versus just Stalkers. And his first Immortal just finished, by the way, for Gerald. And he's throwing down 2 shield batteries.
This is a little bit of the killer instinct that players have done a great job of developing. I think back to the old days of MC. He was so good about being like, well, I'm ahead. I'm not going to mess around. I'm just going to go end the game right now. That's kind of what Hellraiser is trying to do. I love the Warpers of Micro, picking up and going back. He might be like, you know what, there's a few too many units here for me to be comfortable fighting here, especially with those force fields. He's going to back up a little bit. Warping in mostly sentries, which are a good answer for those stalkers. They don't take any kind of bonus damage or whatever, so the fight gets sustained.
Yeah, and he doesn't have charge. He doesn't have charge, so the Adepts will also just be probably a little bit more effective in general. As we see, Gerald kind of sends his own Zealot forward and it mostly just sits there and gets attacked. Now the probes are going to come off the line. The Adepts helped a lot with picking these off. We've got 9 probes eliminated so far, and as you were talking about in control, those Stalkers, not exactly the beefiest units used against the Immortals here. Another Immortal does come down the ramp for Gerald, but is it going to be a little bit too late? I think so. He's got the Observer for the high ground spot. And yeah, okay, save your Immortal for now. Maybe it's going to die anyway, but the Natural is completely forfeit. G is called, and Hellraiser will eliminate Gerald and move on to the decider match of our group today.
Yep, in the kind of, I would say, continuation of the likely storylines continues. I do think that Hellraiser vying for that second spot sounds about right.
Yeah.
Poor Gerald, this is a tough stacked group. The last 2 European groups have been 3 or 4 very good players in that group, which is a little bit unique because we've seen it, especially in the Americas groups, that there's definitely been a couple, and these are all great players. I'm not, no disrespect, but like, you know, new faces getting a nice result, but facing reality. Whereas in the European scene, it's like there's just so many good players. All these groups are amazing.
Yep, every group extremely difficult. And hey, cool debut for Gerald. Gets to play on a stage, get some experience, and perhaps next time we'll be able to make it another step further. And that's the grind, right?
Right.
Most of the players that we see competing in WCS have been playing StarCraft for upwards of 8-9 years.
Yeah.
StarCraft 2, of course.
He just got $675. He's feeling, he's okay.
Yeah.
He do better.
Yeah. Playing the video game. That does mean that our next series is going to be that winners match that we were discussing. This is going to be a little bit, I think a little bit more of a higher level match, right, that we're looking at. Lambo going up against Denver. Lambo should definitely be a favorite. What are your thoughts, Jeffrey?
Well, Lambo's a very, very good Zerg, one of the best in Europe, of course, but specifically off that ZVZ. He's always been dangerous in that matchup.
Yep.
Well read, well studied. He should win here, but Denver looked really good in his match, and is definitely a guy who's had a couple good WCS runs himself.
All right, well, that's what's coming up after the break. Lambo versus Denver. You're watching the World Championship Series.